Hey Master Gardeners, here we are in my vegetable garden and I'm way too late pruning my blackberries, but I'm going to do it right now anyway. Here it is. It's a job that's supposed to be done in February. Here we are already in April, but I'm looking at my clump here and I'm only supposed to have 4 to 6 canes in this clump, and I got way too many, and this makes huge, delicious blackberries. It's only been in the ground 3 years, so I want to begin the proper pruning process. So when you're coming in and pruning, like I said, 4 to 6 canes to begin with. When you come in with your pruners, the first step is to prune out dead stuff, and that's not rocket science. You're coming in and just whacking them off at the ground. You want to take your canes as low as you possibly can down in the ground and pull them out. You know, when you're planting blackberries, you've already put them in a row. You don't have to trellis them, but I did trellis mine because they were flopping over so vigorously. So there's my dead pieces. And so I want to keep my canes in here. Now come on up top here. Last year, I should have pruned out my fruiting canes, and I didn't do that. So here's a cane right here that has old fruiting bodies on the head of it. So it's not hard to see. That's a fruiting stem. So I'm going to start cutting pieces off of it. Now these pieces that I'm cutting off, you're not supposed to just put them out in your rubbish pile. You got to get them off your property because they can carry diseases with them. And I have 2 other canes up here I'm going to prune. This big guy, he fruited last year. And this big guy, he fruited last year. So all these are coming off. And in order so I don't get lost when I get down in the bottom, I just keep cutting them while they're in my hands. I know it's a lot of cutting, but for you guys, this is so I don't mess up while I'm on a camera. So I'm down here to the bottom. I can see who it was. I'm pruning this piece away, cutting that one out. I am going to keep this other vertical because I like, it's kind of nice and strong. So I'm keeping that one. Some of these are a little bit spindly. I'm going to take off this other little guy because he's just so small. He's got green leaves on him, but he's just too spindly and small. So anything that's small and spindly, I don't want. I mean, when you compare that to some of the thickness of these, you can see what spindly is. That's not hard to figure out. And then there's that other piece I cut off on the left side. So I want to stimulate. The purpose of doing this is to stimulate new shoots from the ground. So I'm taking this whole piece out of here, this large one. My objective, remember, was 4 to 6 canes. So let's see, I kind of marked a bunch of them with tape here to see what I have left. Here's another little spindly guy. I'm going to prune him out of there. And I should have done a better job pruning these old canes. You can get certain insects on them. You're looking for different kinds of borers that might have gotten into your stems last year. And what happens with these is you get a cane. This summer I'm going to get new canes where I pruned this away. And these new canes are going to be called primocanes for the first year. Next year they're going to produce flowers for me, so they'll become primocanes. So the canes are biennial for production. The root system of your blackberry is a perennial root system. And what kind of soil do they like? They like a deep humus soil. They like pretty much a broad range of pH. And so what makes these different than the blackberries that are growing in the hedgerow behind me? I mean, there's really blackberries growing out there and nobody's pruning them. But you know what? They're not producing berries as large as these. And because they're not spaced properly, they're not producing as well. And we're trying to increase air circulation. That's why we don't want multiple stems. Now, speaking of which, I got 2 stems overlapping right here. I'm going to prune one of these out of here because he can't be touching the neighbor. And I have 2 lines of cheap, this is just not high quality trellising, but it's enough to keep my plant. I have a bad stub right there. In the summer when these produce and I get new stems coming up, I want to try to remember to tip them. I'm going to tip them at about 4 feet. They say usually 3.5, 4 feet. So I feel like I'm going to stick with what I've got going on down here. Although, let me take that spindly little guy out of there. I'll take that little spindly guy out and that guy. So I want to stimulate that new growth that's going to replace these guys. Everybody that produces fruit this summer, right after it produces fruit, I'm going to come in here and prune those pieces right on down to the ground again. So hopefully that covered some tips on how to do your blackberries. Make sure you sterilize your pruners before you move to your next plant, your crown plant, or just have a second set of pruners with you. So those are some tips on pruning your blackberries, Master Gardeners.